D.B. Cooper is the most infamous hijacker to ever exist. He hijacked a plane and jumped out of it, only to never be found ever again, which is really crazy. But what's even crazier is the title, you might think. And yeah, it is true. I think I have solved the D.B. Cooper case. I'm your host, Detective Tom, not an actual detective, by the way, and today we will be solving the D.B. Cooper case.
A daring parachute escape from a flying 727 somewhere between Reno and Seattle, Washington.
D.B. Cooper.
D.B. Cooper.
D.B. Cooper.
Of D.B. Cooper.
On a plane in Portland, Oregon last night, he was just another passenger who gave his name as D.A. Cooper. The description on one wire service, master criminal. Bill Curtis reports.
We just solved it. Literally. Literally. This is the rig because they know what rig he used when he jumped.
First of all, before we start, I just wanted to say I'm really sorry for having such a bad voice. My voice is so cracked, and I'm recording this from a phone. So yeah, it's really bad. I'll be sure to buy a mic so that the sound quality is way better. But I don't know, I might need to buy some medicine to fix my voice. And second of all, yes, I have edited this in KineMaster. Yeah, it's a good app, but the watermark is so annoying. But okay, it's good. I'm trying my best to make this a good video. My editing is really bad. I'll try my best to make it watchable. That's why, like, in the talking session, I won't do anything. I'll just talk. There'll be nothing on the background, so put on your AirPods or earphones and just listen to what I say. So let's start by first having an overview of what happened during the hijacking. On November 24th, 1971, a day before Thanksgiving, which I don't know why seems intentional, but anyways, a man who identified himself as Dan Cooper went on a plane which would go from Portland to Seattle. He looked normal, wearing a business suit, looked like he was going on a business trip. But a few minutes, I think, to the flight, or an hour into the flight, he gave a stewardess a note saying that he had a bomb and he wanted $200,000 with 2 back parachutes, 2 front parachutes, and a truck to refuel the plane once they landed in return for the passenger's life. And so when the manager of the airline found out about this, he said that he will give the hijacker the money to save the reputation of the airline. And they did. Once they landed, Dan got his money, his parachutes, and the plane was refueled. And now he demanded that 2 or 3 of the stewardess and the pilots would stay and go with him to Mexico City. Mexico City was really far away, so they chose to refuel at Reno. And when they landed to refuel, they found out that Dan was not there. It seemed like he took the parachute and the money and jumped out of the plane because the stairs to the plane were open. And so the search of Dan Cooper began. It seemed like he jumped near the forest at Washington or near the Columbia River. And the FBI searched everywhere, but no remains, no signs of the money or the parachutes were found. And it was like he vanished that night. And I don't want to talk about it that much. You guys can watch other people's videos. If you want a fun and informative video, you guys can watch Buzzfeed Unsolved Network about D.B. Cooper. It's really fun. It's a really fun video. and I would recommend to watch it if you like non-serious videos. But if you want a serious one, I recommend Let Me Know. I think I'm saying it correct. I think I'm saying it wrong. It's LEMMINO. It's a really good and serious video. And I think these are the two videos that I watched to gather all the evidences. And I also wanted to point out that I will be using only these videos, so there might be some clues I've missed. So let me know in the comments if I missed any, or if there are some evidences that contradict my theories. I'll be sure to cover them. So let's get on to theorizing. Now, after jumping out of the plane, there are either two things that could have happened. Either he died because of the fall, or he survived. And it seems like he survived because there were more people who tried to replicate it to make it seem like they're DB Cooper. But when they did it, they survived, even when the conditions were worse than when Dan did it. Which seems like that he could have survived it, but it depends on luck and the ability to do it. And people have speculated that Dan could have survived because he was in the military, as the stewardess and the pilots have recalled that he knew how to use a parachute. It could be because he was in the military, although it could be that he never used it when he was in the military because he only knew a few of the stuff about it, not that much. Maybe he was only trained to use it but never got the chance to use it, and when he hijacked the plane it was his first time. Or perhaps he just went skydiving one day, probably. I don't know if skydiving existed back then, but still, he knew how to handle the parachutes. So let's go over and see if the first scenario is true, that he did not survive the fall. And if he did not survive the fall, there are a few things that could have happened. Either he fell from the plane and fell near the Colombian River, and an animal could have seen him as food, and the animal ate him. And when it saw that the clothes of the parachute or the money bag or the money could not be eaten, it just buried its body. I don't know, I was thinking that why would it bury its body, but maybe that animal did not want its family to know that it had a meal. I don't know why. I just think that. And this could tell why $5,800 were found near the shore of Tina Bar, which is like a few kilometers, not a few, but still kilometers away from the Colombian River. Who knows, maybe he fell near Tina Bar at night and nobody saw him, and a predator ate him, buried his body to preserve it. But it also buried him with the parachute and the money, but $5,800 were left on the shore. And this could be true because his body could not be found, nor was the $194,200 ever found. But I have another theory, and this theory revolves around the guy Richard Floyd McCoy Jr. This guy was among the lists of a few suspects of who could be DB Cooper, but he was checked off when there were a few things that contradicted this theory. First of all, he was in his late 20s, and so much more, but I forgot. But one of them was that he was present at his Thanksgiving dinner at his home in Utah the night after the hijack. There was so much more, but I forgot. Sorry about that. Which is why I said you should watch the full videos of those channels, because I'm doing this by heart. I didn't make a script. Anyways, so this guy Richard is I don't know. I think he holds importance because a few years ago, this guy's children, Shantae and Rick McCoy, Richard's children said that after their mother died, they decided to check out their cabin or shed or whatever it was, and they found an old chest which had a parachute inside of it. And they used to think that their father is D.B. Cooper from the very start. But they didn't tell anyone because they didn't want their mother to get in trouble, as they thought that she was also involved with him in the hijacking. And so when their mother died in 2020, they decided to tell the FBI about it. And when the FBI agent saw it, he was like, "We've solved," just like in the intro. And he said that this parachute was the one that they handed out, I think. I'm not sure. He said that this is the one. He could be wrong, but he said that this design was never made. It was like 1 in a billion, and it was a special one. And so that is why I think that Richard could be involved in a way. And so if Richard is involved, then it could be that that Cooper jumped out of the plane, did not land safely, and he died. And either Richard was just passing by, or he was supposed to meet Dan at the Columbian River or Tina Bar, but then he found his dead body, and then he thought, Cooper died. What should I do with his body? There are a few things that he could have. First, he could have fed him to an animal, got the money and ran away. Probably. 2, he would have found his body and then he would have buried him in the memory of his friend and either buried the money or took the money. There are a lot of things that could have happened. And it could be true, because how else would he have the parachute that D.B. Cooper supposedly used? And about the money, either he buried it or either he took it with him. And I think he probably took it with him because there were $5,800 just lying there. And I think he took the money. He was like, "Oh my God, I'm $200,000 richer." And then he threw some money and then went to his house for his Thanksgiving dinner. He put it in his closet or something and then had dinner, and he forgot about it. But then he remembered, "Oh my God, I had $200,000. He told his wife what he did, and she was like, "Why did you do this, Richard? But I'm going to be with you," if the children were correct about it. Or either he didn't tell her, and before he could tell her, he found out that they had special serial numbers on them, which the FBI leaked to let shopkeepers, banksmen, whatever people, to see if they had the notes with them to find D.B. Cooper. So then he thought, "I can't use this money. Why not bury it?" And then he looked at the parachute he got from him as memory, and he said, "I'm not burying this. I'm keeping this as memory." I think they're friends, because why else would Richard have the parachute? If he was just passing by and then he saw a man dead there, he would probably call the police or something. But if he knew him, he would have taken the parachute in the memory of his friend Dan. And it is said that Dan was probably in the military, so maybe Dan and Richard met at the Vietnam War, and they were talking about people making history like Adolf Hitler, Genghis Khan, all those people. And then D.B. Cooper tells him that, "You're my good pal, and I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do to make history." And then he tells him blah, 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 that I will do this and that, and then we'll meet together. And things probably didn't go as planned, and Dan died. But he probably knew that this was probably going to happen because he wasn't that good at parachuting. And so he probably took it as memory because he was his pal during the war. And maybe it was their idea to fool the world and never let them know who D.B. Cooper is. Maybe Richard also wanted to disappear like that, but then he got caught. He survived, and he probably wanted to flee the country, but he couldn't. And yeah, he was sent to jail. And a few years later, when he tried to escape, he was shot to death. And I think this theory is pretty solid. The fact that Richard and Cooper could have been friends during the Vietnam War. They would have talked about people who've made history, and then they would have thought that maybe we could make history by hijacking a plane and disappearing. And then first Dan did it and he died. And after seeing all the commotion or the popularity he got, Richard was like, I should also do it. But then he got caught and died a few years later. And I don't know why, but there's also this thing in my mind that Richard probably hired Dan to see if he could hijack the plane, to maybe use him as a test subject to see if hijacking could work, or to get the money from the hijacking for himself. He just hired him like an employee or something, and then would have just given him some of the money and then like forgotten about him. But we know it didn't turn out like he thought it would. It doesn't matter if he died or if he survived. After finding out that, oh my god, that's the guy I hired. And then he thought, I should also do it. So he waited a few months and then did it, but he got caught and blah, blah, blah. You guys get the point. Richard is really important to finding the fate of Cooper. It could be anything. They could be old friends. They could not be strangers actually, but they could be friends, or they could be master and servant. And I really like both of these theories. And let me know if there is some evidence that would contradict this theory, if you guys think that this theory is good enough, or if you guys think that Richard might not be the one involved. Okay, scenario number 2. So picture this. Cooper fell off the plane and landed safely in the middle of the Washington forest, whatever it's called. But what do you know? Cooper knows where to go and where the Columbian River is. We'll talk about why he'll go to the Columbian River, but how does he know his way around the forest? Well, it's simple. If he fought in the Vietnam War, he probably knew where to go. It was probably asked to patrol or fight or guard this area. He probably knew where the Columbian River was, and if he's in the military, of course, and I think this is pretty solid. But how would he know where the Columbian River exactly is? How would he know his way around the forest? Well, it could be simple. He could have been the one who fought in the Vietnam War. Or yeah, I forgot. Maybe the Vietnam War or the Cold War. It could be any war, like both of these wars. So yeah, in any of these wars, maybe he was in charge of patrolling in the Washington forests and the Columbian River. Maybe. It could be. When I googled if Washington was attacked in the Vietnam or the Cold War, it said that it wasn't physically attacked, which could contradict my theory, but maybe he was just there to guard it. And he did not face any of the war problems, but maybe he lost his family somewhere where it was attacked. I don't know where it got attacked, but maybe he lived somewhere and then his family got killed, his whole family. And that is why it could prove why there was no missing poster of someone looking similar to Dan. Like, there were no missing posters. No one reported their father, husband, son. No one did. So maybe this was another motive for him to do it. Maybe he did it because he had lost his family already, because he wanted to make history. And what else could he lose? He would lose his life, but he could make history. True, and then he did. Anyways, so why would he go to the Columbian River? He would go to the Columbian River to meet up with Richard. And there are a few things that could have happened there. First of all, Richard could have helped him by burying the money at Tina Bar or the Columbian River, it doesn't matter. Maybe they threw some money like, oh my god, we probably made history. And then they buried it. They took $5,800, probably Cooper's age, or maybe Cooper's date of birth. Oh wait, no, it's like someone who would be 13-year-old at that time. Maybe Cooper's son's age. So yeah, I think maybe 58 is like 1958 for his son's date of birth. Probably, I just thought of it right now. Anyways, because I don't know why, 5800 seems specific. Either he threw it randomly or he just wanted like a reference that my son was born in 1958. He would have been 13 years old. Yeah, probably. Maybe like to confuse the FBI even more, they went to Tina Bar and threw $5,800 that got corroded. Yeah, that got corroded eventually. They like buried them in the sand, got corroded, and kid 9 years later found it. And what happened after that? Richard probably helped him flee the country because according to Lemino, oh my god, I don't know if I'm saying it correct. According to Lemino, Cooper could be Canadian. He said that before the hijacking, I think there was a book about a Canadian pilot, Dan Cooper, literally. Maybe he got influenced by that book to tell his name as Dan Cooper. And I think that book was not in America until 1974. I think that's what he said. And so maybe that was his motive to give his name as Dan Cooper, So knowing this, he would have probably been Canadian, because the pilot also recalls saying that he said that he wanted the money in negotiable American currency, something like that, which is not something an American would say according to him. I don't know actually. If he was American, he would probably just say $200,000. Yeah, knowing this, he could have fled to Canada, his actual country. But I'm not sure if he was also searched there in America. He could have fled to another country, another smaller country, maybe to Mexico, maybe to Spain or France, like somewhere in Europe, maybe Africa, who knows. And then he probably would have gotten plastic surgery, and then he would have changed his name and he would have come as a new person. Could be true, because this theory could only be true if he lost his family, probably. And I have another theory that Cooper was probably dumb. I don't know. I just think that Cooper was dumb and he was like, oh my god, Richard, we're going to split $200,000, $100,000 for you, $100,000 for me. And then Richard was like, do I really want $100,000? I think I want $200,000. And so he shot Dan, killed him in some way. He buried him. And then he was like, oh my god, I have $200,000. And so he was like, oh my god, Dan was such a great friend. And so he buried him with a parachute. And then he took a parachute with him, the money with him. And he literally walked to Tina Bar, threw some money. Oh my god, I'm rich. Or they were already at Tina Bar, like they walked. And then Dan, yeah, I think it could be true that they were walking down the coast. Dan told him everything that happened, everything he did. That is probably how he knew that Dan wrote no funny stuff. Because when he hijacked the plane, Richard also wrote no funny stuff, which was the main thing that made him seem like D.B. Cooper. And so after he was done, he was like, oh my god, $100,000, but bam, that's all my money. But when he went to attend his Thanksgiving dinner, he realizes that it has special serial numbers and he will be found if he uses them. And yeah, he tells his wife, and then they decide to bury it somewhere, probably in their property, and forgot about it. Until 5 months later, he was like, no, I want the money. I don't care if I get caught. I want to make history. Or maybe it was all deliberate. Maybe Dan told him to shoot him because he probably wanted to die because of the fall, but he didn't. So he met up with Richard and he was like, shoot me. I don't want to live anymore. I lost my life, my wife, my kids, probably like that. And then he was like, shoot me. You can take all the money. And then he said, we have right now just made history because he will probably never be found. And yeah, he did. And then Richard probably got the money, and then after realizing the serial numbers, he was like, nah, I'm not using that. I'm keeping this parachute outside. Maybe my children will find it and they will tell the FBI, and then the FBI will say, we just solved it. I don't know. It just seems repetitive. I don't know why. But still, this could be true. And I think this theory is pretty solid, actually. Richard is like, I don't know why, it just seems like the guy. And I think it would suit it better if Richard's father, Richard Floyd McCoy Sr., I think that's his name, I remember. I I think his name ended with Senior. He and Cooper probably fought in World War II. Maybe they were like, we're going to make history, but then Senior died, and then he told it to his son instead, and then they were like, yeah, we're going to do it. But Richard probably did not know this friend of his father's, so yeah, he was like, nah, you're dead. So yeah, he took the money, and then everything that happened just happened. Just whatever. You guys get the point, right? Like, I think Richard is important to this. The pieces fit together so well. It's just that there are so many things that could have happened. Either Dan wanted himself to die, either Richard killed him to get all the money, either Dan did not survive. And it could be that when Dan fell, he fell near Tina Bar and he fell into a ditch, which probably got him buried. I don't know. Who knows? Let me know if you guys agree with my theory. I don't know, it seems solid to me. There could be some things that contradict my theory, and so let me know. Oh yeah, and I also forgot to mention that supposedly Dan left behind a badge of a university. I forgot the university name, of course. Of course I did. Anyways, and there were initials on it. RMF, Richard McCoy Floyd Jr., something like that. Which was one of the main reasons why people thought that Richard was D.B. Cooper. But then, if my theory is correct about Richard and Dan working together, then and if Dan actually left it behind, then maybe he left it behind to confuse the FBI. Could be. And I feel like you guys might ask, how did Richard get to his Thanksgiving dinner so quick? Well, they said that Richard was at his Thanksgiving dinner the day after the hijack. Hijack happened at night. The supposed time of his jump was 8:05 to 8:10 p.m. And so when he jumped, it would have taken him like probably 1 to 2 hours to get there. He probably got there at 10 p.m. He met up with Richard there. They talked for 1 hour or something. And then Richard did whatever he did. He probably betrayed or whatever. He did whatever he did to him. And after that, it would probably be like 1 or 2 a.m. And then he went to the nearest airport, got a ticket to his place in Utah. And the flight time for the Columbian River, wherever the nearest is to Utah, that city in Utah, is like 1.5 hours this day. This day is like 1.5 hours. Back in those days, it was around 3.5 to 5 hours. It depended on which airport he would use. The fastest he could do was 3.5, and the most time he could have used was 5 hours, which is like more than enough to reach his place. And he would have actually reached there by 7 or 8 a.m. Which is the perfect time to like tell your wife that I'm home. He successfully did the hijack, Cooper, and he's gotten the money. But then after realizing the serial number, they were like, nah, we're not using it, and buried it. It doesn't matter what Richard did to Cooper. What matters is that he is definitely involved because of the parachute. And I don't know why. There's just one thing that doesn't make sense to me. Why did Richard bury the money but kept the parachute? Maybe the parachute was a tribute to him, but what about the money? Maybe it was to hide it, maybe because he knew that there are a lot of people who were going to come, who were going to question about the chest, but why did he think that the people will not question about the parachute? Funny, right? But I think I also have an answer for that. It could be that Richard would have said that, oh, this is a parachute from my military, I was going to use it, but then I didn't, because I wanted to save it for my memory, ha 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 ha. I killed Dan Cooper. Maybe he did that because when he hijacked the Boeing 727, he was more careful with it. He wore a jumpsuit, he wore a helmet, and some of the necessary stuff needed, while Cooper wore like the most heavy suit he could have worn. You guys should check the videos. It's like the most absurd thing he could have done. It seems stupid but also clever at the same time to make the FBI think that he died and search more area. Maybe he did it so that the FBI could waste some money on him, even when he's actually either dead, buried under sand, dirt, or he just escaped. Anyways, maybe it is that when he would say, Oh my god, it's just a memory of me. I definitely did not hijack a plane. I was just something from my military and I decided to save it because I didn't use it. Could be. But the money would have been like a much bigger question. Oh, I actually recognize that serial number you have there. I think there was a serial number to the money that D.B. Cooper used. Duh. Could be that. Anyway, if there's any more contradictions that you guys have, let me know. I'll make a part 2 and try to piece together the puzzle pieces. There's also one thing. There is a guy, I think his name is like Connor or something. I forgot. Of course I forgot. But he looked exactly like Cooper. I don't know why I have this like gut feeling inside of me that maybe that Connor guy, whoever he was, maybe he killed Cooper's family. So then Cooper went to Richard. He was like, "Hey man, I got to get revenge on him." And then he plastic surgery himself to look like Connor, whatever his name was. Future Tom here. His name was not Connor. His name was Dwayne. But then when he escaped, he got his face back. Whatever. He changed his face. It could be, but I don't know. Just a really weak theory. I will look at it if I make a part 2. But for now, that's it for today. If you guys have any contradictions, make sure to write it down with hashtag objection, your honor. Lowercases, no spaces, so that I can have an easier time finding it. I'll make sure to add it in my part 2. And the next video will be about Keddy cabin murders. I've actually found 2 solid theories. Oh my god, I'm so excited. Anyways, I hope you guys liked the video, and I'll see you at the Keddy cabin number 28. Bye.